bad publishers, bad practices, bad games, and good advice. Cutting words. Hi folks, I'm Gheeotine, and this week I wanted to discuss some thoughts I've been dwelling on since my Red Dead Redemption 2 video is still in the works. Thoughts that were prompted by the relatively recent release of Donkey Kong Bonanza. I played it for a bit, but my thoughts are less on the game itself and more on its reception. Specifically, review sites adorning it with perfect review scores like champagne to an F1 podium. I don't know if it's just me, but when I see perfect reviews, I become more skeptical than excited. That's because, in my mind, perfect games do not exist. Let's back up a little and start with a different angle of approach. First is the society-wide practice to ascribe a numerical value for the quality of something. In certain contexts, this can be appropriate. The best example is Olympic-style sports where experts can observe the performance of a specific task with a predetermined base of knowledge and allocate measurements of quality. Form and execution. Objective analysis. And that is the first area where things break down for me and the notion of artistic criticism. The difference of objective analysis versus subjective analysis. Objective versus subjective can be boiled down in its most basic elements to an analysis of fact versus an analysis of feeling. Let's look at an example with this pen. Objective statements that apply would be, this pen writes in 4 different colors of ink, and can interchange with manually operated clicks. Subjective statements would be, I like the shade of red, or the clicking operation is smooth and simple to operate. The former declarations are fairly inarguable, and the latter are open to debate and individual interpretations. With all that established, let me ask a question. With the medium of video games being as expansive and open to interpretations and tastes as it is, how can you justify a score and indeed an objective rating to the notion of criticism when so many things are open to alternative perspectives? Short answer, you can't. If you want to attempt to ascribe the notion of perfection, I'd argue that it would have to be applied from a mechanical angle. That said, there is at least one game that, while I'm not stating it is perfect, one could argue it's one of the closest games we have, Tetris, Alexei Pajitnov's classic, an almost purely mechanical experience. Uncomplicated in its concept, masterful in its execution, and addictive in the simple gameplay loop that satisfies and intensifies as you play. It's being iterated on to this day, and even original versions are played in spite of the technological advances that can facilitate photorealism or other graphical effects. From casual to competitive, if you can get a person to understand the control scheme, they can play this game. And yet, even this formula has people that don't care for it. To state plainly, no game has universal appeal. Taste is by its very nature subjective. The perfect game does not exist outside of one perspective, the creator's. If a game maker develops a game, does everything they wanted with it, and meets every standard they have, that is their, and only their, perfect video game. A prime example would be Chris Sawyer, the maker of, among other things, Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2. Heavily paraphrasing things, he made those 2 games, decided he'd iterated enough on the formula, was happy with what he made, and stopped. He made his perfect theme park management simulator, and while he was satisfied with his game, do you think every game player out there will find appeal in it? I mean, it's fine to like a game. Hell, I love games, but even my favorite games have elements you can criticize. Journey by that game company might be the closest thing I could describe as perfect in my experience, but that's within my own little bubble, and even I can understand why someone else might not like it. My perspective is not yours. But that touches on what I think is one of the largest problems in gaming media. Reviews suck. More specifically, the widespread practice of game reviewers to allocate a numerical value sucks. How do you boil down a complex and nuanced opinion on your personal and subjective experience on a game that can vary wildly from person to person, each with their own individual preferences? To somewhat illustrate my point, looking at IGN, I pulled up their shortlist of finger quotes perfect games. Games that have all scored a 10 out of 10. The Resident Evil 4 remake. Yeah, you can go and look at my review for that one. I tore into it. Overwatch? Yeah, right. Super Mario Odyssey or Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? Never finished them. Got bored with each one halfway through. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception? Entire sections of that game could be removed and it would hardly affect the plot. Pokemon Red and Blue? I love those games, and know damn well they have room for improvement. Ocarina of Time? I've no word of a lie, tried playing that at least 4 separate times, and fell away due to disinterest every single time. The whole point of that list of games I just rattled off is that even if a title is considered amazing, that does not carry over to all audiences. I'm sure you could go through each of my own game reviews and could find something I praised in a game I disliked, or a detail that might turn you off for a game that I praised and recommended. If someone says a game is 10 out of 10 to me, I walk away with nothing but the vague impression that they liked it. Unless they can explain in detail each element that makes them like it, a perfect score rating is next to useless. But how would one fix this? Well, first of all, if we have to set up a rating scale to things, something that's kind of dumb, but if we got a pigeonhole, then our ratings in themselves could be somewhat vague. A letter grade might be something a bit more useful because that has room for interpretation. Even something being rated as A+ can be read as having space for improvement, albeit small. If someone wants a more thorough readout, then they can look into the finer details of a review and look at the substantive analysis. It would certainly promote a bit more media literacy. Actually, speaking of media and the analysis of it, I think the best thing I can think of that gamers and consumers can do is look past what is written and instead look to who is doing the writing. My favorite game critic, whom some of you may recognize, is Benjamin Yahtzee Croshaw. Formerly of the Escapist and Zero Punctuation fame, he writes reviews under his well-established style for Second Wind and the Fully Ramble-O-Matic series. One thing you will notice if you watch his reviews is that he never boils down his opinions of a game into a numerical value, unless doing so ironically or for the sake of a bit. Being familiar with his body work, I also know some of his tastes and that he, along with other reviewers I follow, try to find things they like in games they hate, and vice versa. In all his years of reviews, the closest thing to a perfect game he's ever reviewed was the original Portal, with the biggest complaint being about the relative brevity. But if you listen closely to what he says, you can also glean important details that can also help other viewpoints gain insights, particularly regarding the style of humor.
Lastly, there's Portal, and if you're a regular viewer, you'll understand how insane these words feel coming out of my mouth, but I can't think of any criticism for it. I'm serious, this is the most fun you'll have with your PC until they invent a force feedback codpiece. I went in expecting a slew of interesting Portal-based puzzles, and that's exactly what I got, but what I wasn't expecting was some of the funniest pitch-black humour I've ever heard in a game. Okay, it's only 2 to 3 hours long, but that's a good length for it. It means it doesn't outstay its welcome, and it narrows the gap between you and the balls-tighteningly fantastic ending.
Humor being a subjective thing, there may be some out there that don't enjoy pitch-black jokes, but that goes back to my stance on subjectivity. What one person may like may be a deal-breaker for another, and if you only look at a numerical score, you can lose that insight. By going into the fine detail, some may find a detriment where Yahtzee himself was making a point of praise. To go any further, though, will ultimately result in me repeating myself and having my rant become more incoherent, so I'm gonna stop here for the day. I should have my next episode of Minimum Spec Gaming ready by next week, so for now, if you'll excuse me, I have some eBay auctions to monitor. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. Remember that I give away Steam keys with my regular weekly uploads, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment and have contact info on your YouTube profile. But as always, thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.